things are heating up in Venezuela very quickly. US just moved 10 F-35 stealth fighter jets to a base in Puerto Rico that's only 300 miles from the coast of Venezuela. This is happening in direct response to the warnings US ships have gotten from Venezuelan Air Force. Here's what I mean by this.
This morning, in what U.S. officials call a highly provocative move, the Pentagon says 2 Venezuela military planes flew near a U.S. Navy ship. It appears to be a show of force days after the U.S. military attacked this boat in the southern Caribbean, allegedly carrying drugs from Venezuela, killing 11 people. The Pentagon last night claiming the Venezuelan flights were designed to interfere with our counter-narco-terror operations.
It's a war on killers. It's a war on terrorists.
Just yesterday, Secretary of State Marco Rubio in Ecuador expanded the administration's crackdown on drugs flowing out of Latin America, designating 2 Ecuadorian gangs as foreign terrorist organizations and vowing to carry out more attacks on drug cartels.
Now, if you're like me, I'm sure you have had a lot of questions after hearing that story. First one being, obviously, how the hell did they get F-16s? Well, let me answer that real quick. You see, back in 1970s, Venezuela and US were quite friendly. In fact, you can go as far as to call Venezuela a close US ally at the time. It has strong oil revenues, and Washington saw it as a stable democracy that could help balance Cuba's Soviet-backed military power in the Caribbean. So, in 1982, Venezuela actually became the first Latin country to buy F-16 Fighting Falcon. As part of this deal, US delivered 24 F-16s over the next couple of years. Now, over the next few decades, Venezuela maintained the F-16s and even upgraded some of the avionics and weapons. They were the backbone of Venezuela's air defense, replacing the old Mirage and F-86 jets. But after Hugo Chavez came in power in 1999, US-Venezuela relations soured. In fact, in 2006, US imposed an arms embargo on Venezuela, banning exports of spare parts and upgrades for the American weapons that the country already had. This left Venezuela struggling to keep the F-16 fleet operational. Without official parts, Venezuela resorted to buying black market components, reverse engineering, or cannibalizing the planes, meaning taking parts from some planes to keep the other ones flying. By 2010s, only a handful of F-16s were airworthy. This is when Venezuela turned to Russia, buying the new Su-30 aircraft, and that's something we'll talk about later in the video. But as of 2025, most of the original 24 F-16s are grounded. In fact, experts suggest that fewer than 5 can actually still fly, and even that with limited capabilities. The funniest part of this whole story was that Venezuela actually tried to sell them to Iran in 2006, but the deal never actually went through. Now they're stuck with a couple of F-16s that can fly, but they get worse with every single flight, and they just used 2 of them to send a very bad message to President Trump, which seems to be backfiring. Because it's not just F-35s that are moving closer to Venezuela's borders. We also have other powerful weapons. Just this morning, we got reports of another C-17 headed to Puerto Rico, this time from J.B. Louis McCord, home to the 2nd Ranger Battalion. A lot of stuffs keep arriving around Venezuela, and let me give you guys a breakdown of exactly what we know so far. But before that, I quickly want to show you guys President Trump's response to Venezuela using F-16s to give a warning to U.S. Navy ship. Here's the clip.
Venezuela flies jets over U.S. naval vessels again.
Well, I would say they're going to be in trouble. We'll let them know about that. We heard that happen, but it wasn't really over, not like they described. But I would say, General, if they do that, you have a choice of doing anything you want, okay? If they fly in a dangerous position, I would say that you or your captains can make the decision as to what they want to do, all right?
Sure. Sir, how close did they get? We have one message, and you said they didn't go over.
Say it.
How close did they get? You said the planes did.
Well, I don't want to talk about that, but if they do put us in a dangerous position, they'll be shut down. Thank you very much, everybody. So we're going to now cover the G20.
Now, of course, in the original clip, you guys also saw that Venezuelans' flyover of the F-16 came after US took out a drug boat or drug cartel's boat. Now, according to official Venezuelan statement, these were not drug cartel members, these were normal fishermen. But it's not like we can expect Maduro regime to just admit that they've been smuggling drug all this time. What we do know is Maduro himself is one of the biggest drug traffickers in the world, and that drug that he's smuggling flows all over the world, including the United States and Europe. In fact, just last year, his government made more money smuggling drug than exporting oil. Venezuela has the largest oil reserves in the world, more than Saudi Arabia, more than Russia, but still they're making more money smuggling drugs. So next up, let's look at the statement Maduro made after his recent flyover and after US took out the drug boat.
Yes, indeed, Isa. I think that in this crisis there are two dimensions. On one side is the confrontation between the United States and the Maduro government. I think we have passed the point of the inflammatory rhetoric of the discourse. We've seen that the US is willing to take decisive action and frankly killed 11 Venezuelans on the allegations that they were carrying drugs in a speedboat cruising across the Caribbean Sea. And that, of course, has been protested by the Maduro government. They have also protested the recent deployment of US Navy at large. They did not address the incident with the two F-16 fighter jets, which of course are American-made, so in a way trying to add even insult to injury. When we asked them, they pointed out, however, that several countries in the Caribbean community of the CELAC protested the deployment of the Navy. So that is the big geopolitical aspect in this story. And on the other side, you have everyday Venezuelans who are trying, in one way or another, to go on with their day. This is a country that is still grappling with dramatic economic conditions, of course, and where most of the people, however they would like to see a change in government, at least here in Caracas, they are also very aware that the US has put pressure on Maduro in the past and are not believing that this time is any different.
Now here are the exact details of the deployment that's making Maduro scared. We have USS Lake Erie, we have USS Sampson, USS Gravely, USS Jason Dunham. Again, this was the ship that Maduro did the F-16 flyover over. And on top of that, we have rumors about USS Newport submarine being in the Caribbean. That's not including the 3,000 Marines we have, air assets, and other assets. On top of this, as I'm recording this, Secretary of Defense or Secretary of War now, Pete Hegseth, is in Puerto Rico, and Puerto Rican media is talking about US reopening multiple old bases that were closed down before this escalation with Venezuela. So, you guys want to take a guess what Maduro is doing after seeing all this? It's what every anti-US country always does. Maduro is calling on China. During his most recent speech, where he was addressing the tensions between the United States and Venezuela, President Maduro mentioned China. He pulled out a phone that apparently he claims was given to him as a gift from Chinese leader Xi Jinping, and he called it the most unhackable phone in the world, a phone that even CIA could not hack. Now, of course, this statement in itself is not a threat of China getting involved if US takes any action. But in reality, Venezuela and China have been working together for the past 2 decades. In fact, if it wasn't for the CCP and Putin, Maduro would not even be in power because they help him fight against coup attempts and they help him fund his oppression by buying his oil. 90% of Venezuelan exports go straight to China. This is exactly why back in 2019, when there was a credible coup attempt against Maduro's regime, people wanted to bring democracy in Venezuela. It was Russia and it was China who helped him secure his position in power. Here's more details on that. But before we get to that, you talked about how Maduro has gone through difficult situations. And in 2019, there was a coup attempt. And based on what I have read, it seems like he was very close to losing power. And on this channel, we follow Russia, China a lot. We've been following the Russian invasion. And maybe I'm incorrect and you can correct me, but Putin played a big role in keeping Maduro in power in 2019. If you know anything about that, could you share that with the audience?
Yes, 100%. So Russia is, it's funny because leftists and even some people on the right are very against U.S. intervention, whatever that means, because it could mean different things at the same time, depending on who is criticizing or supporting that statement. They always say, leave Venezuela alone. The U.S. is always intervening on these countries, but they never talk about Chinese intervention. They never talk about Russian intervention, which is of course, for the nature that those regimes have, very dangerous, not just for South America, not just for countries like Venezuela, but even for the US. Imagine how dangerous it is for the US to have a country that is a dictatorship, that is a narco state, and that has Russian intelligence just 3,000 miles away from Florida, just in your backyard, So yes, Russia is deeply involved in Venezuela. Iran is as well. China is as well. So enemies of the United States are collaborating with the Maduro regime. In what way? At least with Russia. Well, Russian companies have invested in Venezuelan oil. Venezuela has received military equipment from Russia. Venezuela has received Russian intelligence and strategic intelligence over the last 2 decades. So we're talking about an actual intervention from Russia in Venezuela that, of course, has bad intentions. Just in May this year, May 2025, Russia and Venezuela signed a partnership contract. So it's more important than ever, especially for the conflict that we have in Eastern Europe, for the US to understand that this is our area of influence. And the US shouldn't allow Russia to intervene in Venezuela and to have the power and control that they currently have. And it's not just Russia, as I mentioned, it's also China, for example. China has lent to Venezuela over $60 billion over the last years. And money that Venezuela gives back to China, not through cash or actual money, but to oil. To imagine how important it is Venezuela to Russia. So if we want the US to be stronger, if we actually believe in Western values, if we understand that even though we don't have a perfect system or a perfect government, we are way better than the system that Russia has or what China promotes, it is important also for us to understand that we should dominate this area, this region. And for those who are listening to me that right now would probably accuse me of being a neocon or that I've been asking for US intervention, I think it's in the US interest, not from a perspective of self-sacrifice, to find a solution in Venezuela. If you want a safer United States of America, if you want a safer Western Hemisphere, of course, you need to try to neutralize a regime that is a narco state and that is collaborating with your biggest enemies.
Now, the craziest part of all this is US has kind of openly called for regime change in Venezuela, and this statement has come from none other than Secretary of State Marco Rubio, who just said this publicly a few days ago.
Nicolas Maduro is an indicted drug trafficker in the United States, and he's a fugitive of American justice. We're not just going to hunt for drug dealers with the little fast boats and say, let's try to arrest him. No, the president has said he wants to wage war on these groups because they've been waging war on us for 30 years and no one has responded. But there's no need to do that in many cases with the friendly governments, because the friendly governments are going to help us. They may do it themselves, and we'll help them do it.
YouTube just dropped a mind-boggling announcement. It is paying creators $64 million per day. Why? Well, because YouTube doesn't have enough creators. That is why you see videos on your homepage that have less than 1,000 views, like this one right here. Now, of course, this doesn't mean that everyone should start a channel. But if you have ever wondered about starting a YouTube channel or a faceless channel, now is a perfect time. YouTube is paying creators millions of dollars every single day, and it's pushing newer and smaller channels now more than ever. But I'm sure you have many questions on how to start and grow a channel. We get questions in our email all the time from some of you guys. That's why we decided to put all our YouTube advice into one YouTube video for completely free. So if you're someone interested in starting your own channel, you can watch that video here on YouTube by clicking the link in the description or card on your screen.